Hi, everyone. My name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we have the thrill to have Roger Ross Williams and Brooklyn Sedano and their fabulous project about one of the ultimate divas of all time, Miss Donna Summers, that will be airing on HBO Max. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are on the call today, beginning with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Kimberly Singleton in New York, New York, Dana Abercrombie in New York, New York, Mercedes Springers in Atlanta, Nancy Green in Los Angeles, Karan Lenoir in Virginia, and Aisha Niambe. And Aisha, where are you? You're in Philly, aren't you?
Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia. I am going to let you guys do what you do so well, and I'll see you on the other side.
Do you love somebody? Does everybody here have somebody to love? No? Well, love me for right now, okay?
The audience would get completely uncontrollable. People would begin to, rip their clothes off and throw them on the stage, bras, underwear. I didn't know it was going to be that racy.
I remember when I Feel Love came on at Studio 54, you just stopped in your tracks. You thought, what is this? People screamed. It just went on and on and on, and you didn't want it to stop.
I have a secret life. You're looking at me, but what you see is not what I am.
Who is she?
My approach to singing, I approach it as an actress. I don't approach it as a singer. And it's really acting. I'm not trying to be me. I came out with Georgia with the which just changed the face of music for a while.
She was the first female Black artist to ever have a video on MTV.
She was complicated and struggled with her fame.
Donna was trying to navigate being a mother.
And the responsibility of that and the weight of that is immense. There's too much fire in me.
A lot of her life revolved around privacy and secrecy. We would find out things by reading newspaper articles that they had clipped out and hidden in places.
Sing it loud.
She works hard for the money. So hard for it, honey. I work hard for my money, so you better treat me right. All right.
Your creativity is a never-ending process. The process is the key.
How you doing? I'm Kim Singleton out of New York City, like Gil said, and I have a show considered Black-lit television show and podcast. And I just love this documentary. I was a huge Donna Summer fan, and it just shared so much information about her that I didn't know. My question would be for Brooklyn. This is your mom, and I saw that it was very emotional sometimes in the documentary to tell the story. Are there any pieces of the story that you struggled with in terms of sharing it publicly? Did your daughter protective mode kick in? And, what did you struggle with in terms of sharing with everyone else?
To be honest with you, I think the search for the truth and vulnerability and transparency was really the foundational tenet of this project. And so when Roger and I first sat down and discussed doing this together, I was very clear that I wanted to tell the truth. I think when you have a legacy like my mother, her legacy deserves the truth. And I think that all that she accomplished and all that she was able to do is only strengthened by some of those trials and tribulations and uncomfortable conversations. I don't think it takes away from her legacy. I think that is actually the antithesis, because when you really understand where somebody is coming from, you understand when they reach that pinnacle, that success, how much greater is that? How much stronger and how much more powerful that story is and that journey is when you realize what that person had to overcome and go through.
Yeah. And I when I first met Brooklyn, I think one of the first things I said, is this going to be an authorized, PR film? Because if so, I don't want to be involved. And she was adamant that, this was not going to be that. And I was like, well, Are you ready to go to really uncomfortable places? Are you ready to go to really painful places? Are you ready to cry? And she cried a lot. I mean,
I always would tell him I'm okay with my emotions. That's
yeah,
okay.
she cried a
There's
lot.
nothing wrong with it. You know, I'm an actor. I'm in touch.
This woman can cry. Like, she's a good crier, and she just, you know, and she would cry. And then a lot of the subjects, because they were talking about Donna for the first time, you know, openly, because they were very protective of her. So her family members, her sisters, her brother, her, you know, her manager had never spoken to the press.
Yeah.
You know, her brother had never, you know, they were opening up for the first time. Her abusive ex-boyfriend, they were all opening up for the first time. And they were like, oh, Brooklyn, can I talk about this? And she would be like, you can. She gave them permission. She's like, tell the truth, tell the truth. And when she gave them permission, it just flooded out. And then the tears flooded out. And then Brooklyn would be crying, and then they'd be crying. And I'd start crying, because, you know, it was all about this truth. It's such a beautiful thing that we'd all be in tears.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing her story with us.
You're welcome.
Hey, Brooklyn and Roger. Brooklyn, we actually met a couple of years back when you.
Yes,
were
I was going to say,
promoting-
I
yeah,
know
your
you.
show. And Roger, I love the hair. I'm going to try to do
Thank
that
you.
tomorrow for an event. So
I had a hairdresser, because tonight's the premiere, the disco HBO dance party with who's the DJ?
Josiah Bell.
Josiah Bell DJing, and at the Edison Ballroom in New York. So I had to have my hair all.
yeah, absolutely. So my question, I've got a two-parter here. So Roger, I love the fact that Donna was able to tell her own story. When you have a situation like that where the subject is able to really tell their own story, how easy is it for you to direct? And then for you, Brooklyn, what was it that you learned? What was something new that you learned about your mother through this process that you didn't know before?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's actually harder when you use the voice of the subject to narrate the story, because when you have experts and other people, you know, sort of telling their story for them, they kind of speak, especially experts, they kind of speak in in these sound bites, you know, they're used to. If we had like musicologists and music experts, they just know how to just give you the bites, they've practiced in their head, they know what they're gonna say, you can piece that together. But when Donna was recording, this was a recording from her interview with the writer when she was doing her book. And it was just a free-for-all. It was just, I don't know, 7, 8 hours. I don't know how long.
50.
15?
I think 50. I think it was like 50.
Sorry.
I think it was 50 cassette tapes. So however many hours that is.
Yeah, 50 hours. I forget it was that much. 50 hours of interview with Donna. And she doesn't think this is something that's gonna be ever heard by anyone except that writer. So she's not speaking the way Donna would speak if she was doing an interview, you know, if she was on Merv Griffin's show or Arsenio Hall. She was speaking just like freestyling. It was just like pouring out. So it wasn't always articulate, it wasn't always perfect. So we have to make it sound perfect. And that's a hell of a lot of editing work.
Yeah.
And then to add, you know, we did 7, 8 hours of interviews with all of the family members, you know, sometimes multiple days with the family members to add that. It was tough to try to put that together. And I think it's harder when you do an all audio interview, and then when you have some people on camera also talking, because you have to edit the audio in a way that's very clear, because people have to listen, and they're not having they're not reading the lips or seeing people's body language.
Yeah, but to add to what Roger's saying here, it was really important for us to have it feel like she was telling her own life story as much as possible, that she was the narrator of this film, so that you're really getting a sense, even when we open up the film with the eyes, right? Like you're immediately captured by Donna and get a sense of, okay, this is going to be through her lens, through her experience. And so to have her to be the one guiding as much as possible, we thought was going to be the most impactful and the most appropriate, and we were really lucky to have so much of that audio and the home footage and other interviews that we were able to cut together to make it, make her the star, and in regard to what I learned, I think as a kid, you hear all of these bits and pieces and stories, but when you put it all together, for me, really understanding the intensity of her experience, particularly when she really shot to fame, 1975, to 1980, like that really intense 5-6 year period where she created so much, she did so many tours, so much press, but also was a mom. Also was struggling with her identity and how she was being known and her persona, and just the weight of all of that, the choices and the sacrifices that she had to make to come on the other side and survive that. Barely, but she did. And so I've always had a lot of respect for my mother, but my respect and understanding of what she was able to do, of her strength and her gifting and her sacrifice is just off the charts. It runs so deep. I feel very proud to come from that DNA,
Hi, Aisha Muhammad. My question is, right now, your mother seems to be so hot. Everybody is after her story. Everybody wants to play her. What makes her story so compelling and so interesting? And why do you think that this is happening now?
I think my mother's story is compelling because she's the every woman. She would always call herself the ordinary girl. And I think she would say that was because her life story is like many women, suffering abuse, being in a bad relationship, having to fight for her worth in terms of her value in her career, having to break down doors and barriers and to always be the one pushing, balancing motherhood and your dreams and your career, so I really feel like her story is an every woman's story. She just had this really incredible gift, and she was a true artist. And so that's how she expressed herself. And, I think it's happening now is because what she was able to do artistically is timeless. When something is good and it connects to an audience and to people, and there's the seed of truth in it, that goes beyond any generation. And I think, what her music really was really great at was bringing people together, as well as allowing people to feel seen and loved and be able to express joy. And so all of those things, those are universal. And so, it's great when you see Beyonce doing Summer Renaissance, or Sam Smith covered I Feel Love a couple of years ago. And so, I think her music is really part of the fabric of our culture. And so it goes on.
Hello, this is Karan with Karanism.com and Love Music Pleasure. And I want to tell you, I was so impressed with this because it was really a pleasure to meet her. She literally was part of the fabric of my life, the soundtrack of my life. And I mean, I grew up on the glamour, I grew up on the gorgeousness, but to see her as a fully realized woman, as a mother, and not to glorify the struggle, but to acknowledge so much of what we share in life and love. Mental health was a huge part of that. At a time when we didn't have the language for it, and to speak to ways that we protect ourselves in service of the world. What did you learn about taking care of yourselves while you were developing this documentary?
You gonna go first, Roger?
No, because I didn't learn anyway.
I will say that, doing this film for me was, an immersive experience. It's not something that I could just shut off at the end of the day. And, I had to be really careful about giving myself time and space to process certain things. You know, sometimes we would get edits or there would notes would need to be done. And I really, you know, I have 2 children, I have young kids, and I would have to say, you know what, like, I can't watch this tonight before bed, because if I do that, I'm not going to sleep. And so there was times where I had to be really disciplined with myself and understand my limitations in order to be able to serve the process well, but also protect my own sense of space and know when I needed to take a moment, you know. So I really, that's really kind of what I needed to do in order to kind of make it through for the long haul, because it wasn't a short process. This film, to get it the way we wanted it to be, took some time, and so, you know, just had to pace ourselves.
What I learned about process, I learned that, you know, in my family, you know, which is often in the Black family, you know, we, especially with my mother and my parents' generation, they didn't really talk about things. And I learned the value of that just watching Brooklyn for the first time have conversations, especially with the older people in her family, about things that was very difficult for them to talk about. And once they opened up, I was like, oh, this is so healing. And if anything, in the process, it helped me to talk to people in my own family about things that, you know, are difficult.
Well, you guys did a magnificent job in spotlighting the perfection in her imperfection. And I'm really grateful to that. I think it's going to speak to so many women and human beings. She said successful so many times. I wanted to go back and count how many times she mentioned the word success. But thank you so much for this offering.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mercedes. I'm with She Critiques in Atlanta. So I want to kind of dive more into the music, because the music is really why we here, why we love her. It transports you back to that disco era, of course, watching the documentary, but she still has such a unique sound even within that era. So my question is, how would you describe, like, what adjectives would you use to describe the sound of your mother's music? And do you think that she was trapped into continue to deliver that same type of sound?
So I think when I think of my mother's voice, I think of it, she used it as an instrument. And I think she understood that it was an instrument and that she used that to serve each particular song. And I think that's why her music also transcends, and what also set her apart from other, what you would say maybe disco singers. She was not a disco singer. She was an artist. And I think there's a difference there. And I think that's why her songs were so impactful, and why the body of her music is, her catalog is so extensive, and it goes beyond dance music. You hear ballads, or MacArthur Park. Yes, it's in the disco area, but that's like a standard. You know, she won Grammys for gospel, the first Grammy for female rock vocal. So her voice was able to transcend really multiple genres. And so, you know, so when I think, if I say an adjective, it would be versatile. I think that's really what she took pride in, that. And I think that was important to her to have, because as an artist, you want the freedom to do all the things you want to do that inspire you. And I think being kind of confined to that disco box, she would say, yeah, it's fun to be the queen of something. Yes, but she was a box breaker. So anytime somebody tried to put her and say, well, you do this, she would be like, oh no, you think I'm gonna just sing Love to Love You? I'm gonna sing MacArthur Park. Oh, I'm gonna sing MacArthur Park. Oh no, I'm gonna sing Hot Stuff. Oh, I'm gonna sing Hot Stuff. Oh no, I'm gonna write a female anthem. She works hard for the money. So I think that, you know, she was always pushing forward. And so, you know, I know people tried to limit her, but she wouldn't let them.
You know, it's interesting, I'll say one thing quickly. It's interesting when you think about Donna Summer and other Black women who came out of the gospel and the church, you know, they became, you know, R&B singers, Donna went completely the other direction. You know, theater hair, you know, to do theater, to do hair, and she didn't go the route of, you know, Aretha Franklin or those, you know, those incredible, powerful singers that went to the R&B gospel route. She was always thought outside of the box. And I think even early from a young age, when she would sneak out of the house and go see Janis Joplin, you know, being influenced by Janis Joplin and Mahalia Jackson gave her a unique perspective.
And Josephine Baker. I mean, she really is a combination of all of those women.
Yes, I so enjoyed the documentary. It was so well thought. I appreciate you. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Hi, Carolyn. First, here's what happened in Carolyn Talks podcast. I love this documentary. I grew up listening to disco and to Donna Summer, you know, and like they still play her music back home in Barbados on the radio. But one thing that I love about documentaries like this, especially about documentaries about Black performers and Black women in particular, is we get to see that no matter how old we get, we're still learning about ourselves. You know, we're still learning about the world and how we relate to the world, whether we're singers, dancers, actors, lawyers, or whatever, we're still learning. And that really comes through in this documentary. We get to see that Donna, right up until the end, was still learning who she was, you know, was still trying to find her voice as a woman and also as a performer. And so for both you and for both you, Brooklyn, and for Roger, I want you to talk about how for you, Brooklyn, what you learned about yourself as an actress, as a performer, and a mother, a daughter, and most importantly, a woman, watching your mother's story unfold in front of you. And for you, Roger, not as a fan of Donna, as having been a fan of her when you were younger, and now you are the person responsible for telling this story about someone that was a pivotal part of your life as a younger man. And now as an adult, like what did you learn about yourself as a director, and how you have to learn to step away from maybe your own perceptions of people that you admire, and then say, no, I have to really reach deep and bear all the dirty stuff as well as the good stuff. So we'll go with you first, Brooklyn.
Okay, well, I think one of the things that this process has been really impactful for me is to trust my instincts. Like, this was my directorial debut. And I think that having Roger as my companion in doing this, to say, oh no, like, trust yourself, like you got this, you know? And I think it's just reminding myself that it really is about storytelling. You know, I've been in front of the camera, and I've been in the music business with my family, and now I'm behind the camera for the first time. It really is about storytelling. And I think it was just really a matter of understanding that more deeply and trusting my instincts and my creative impulses in a deeper way. And it was an extraordinary experience to be able to have a vision and really see it through in such a deep, connected way. And I feel very privileged to have had that time to have this process, because it's changed me. I've loved directing. This will be my first film. It will not be my only film. So I think creatively, it really empowered me. And I think my mother would be so proud, because she wanted to be a director. She wanted to be an actor, and she got to dabble a little bit in it, but nothing ever in a real substantial way. And so, you know, she would always call me the reporter growing up when I was a kid, because I would come home and I would share all the news, all the tea of the day. And so it just seems really fitting that my first film is a report on her. And I think that, you know, to see her always break through and push to the next level was just very inspiring and empowering for me to say, you know what, this is a big risk for me. It's a big undertaking. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of expectation, but you got to go big or go home. And so, you know, just always push to that next level, no matter what age you are, you know.
I learned that to stay true to yourself as an artist and never compromise your artistic vision and fight for what you believe in. A lot of times, Donna, you know, really never compromised. And, you know, when she talks about the record industry and being raped and the record industry, that feeling of being raped and being compromise, and she fought, and when suing her, being one of the first artists to sue her label and get her masters back and fight for her artistically for what she believed in, that it really taught me how that is important. Otherwise, it's gonna destroy you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm sure this film will mean a lot, especially to a lot of Black female performers and singers now, like, because there's like a few lawsuits happening. So I'm sure it'll be an inspiration for them. And just again, thank you so much for being so honest with this film, because I think it's important that we learn to see behind the facade of the performance, that we learn how to realize that artists, performers, that when they're on, who we see on stages and who they are, like, we don't see their struggles. So thank you so much for being so open with it.
Hi, I'm Nancy Green with Film Critique. Hi, and one of the things that I was curious about, Donna Summers is obviously, she's such a legend and everything. When having something like this, can you talk about can you talk about some of the truths and the life lessons that people can learn from her story and from her journey? Because you were speaking about that earlier, and when we have these legends, their whole life is there for the public to see. So I wanted to know if you could kind of go into that a little bit.
Well, I think one of the truths is how to be able to move beyond the things that happen to you. I think one of the examples that I think she set is that you're not defined by the trauma or a victim of your experience, and that if God puts a gift in you, that gift is still viable, even if you make mistakes. And that those shouldn't be the things that keep you from being who God called you to be, And I think that was always something that she would, if she knew, like in real life, if she knew something happened, or I know of conversations that she would have with people, and she would really encourage them to not acknowledge this stuff. Yes, you have to process that, but to not let that define the rest of your life, that there's still a lot of good to be had and a lot of ways to be of use. And so, I think that is one element, but also the element of having these hard conversations, and that if you don't process your trauma, if you don't speak about your trauma or have the opportunity to speak about your trauma, in whatever level and form that comes, that it blocks the healing that is possible, because healing is possible. And sometimes, particularly in communities of color, we don't like to air our dirty laundry. We don't want to talk about the bad things because we're already dealing with a lot already. But I think that in order to get to that next level, you have to be able to process, and you have to be able to heal, so that the next generation can then move forward and have more and be more free.
Here. I totally agree.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Hi, Dana Abercrombie from the Coalition. What's really interesting with this documentary, it seems that Black people had to leave the country in order to be Black. And what I picked up, at being at the age of 19 and going to Germany, it really shaped not only her identity, but also her sound. And so I was wondering, from you, Brooklyn, as being her daughter, how do you feel that it shaped her as a mother, as opposed to having even more restrictions on who she could become as an artist? And then, going home to see mom on top of that.
Well, I think going to Germany at 19 really was the foundation of who she became, starting in hair and particularly hair, because it was so the antithesis of what her upbringing was. And I think there was a real sense of freedom of like, oh, I can stretch my wings and I can make a mistake and I can do these things and it's okay. And I walk down the street and instead of somebody calling me a bad name, they're looking at me and telling me how beautiful I am. So there was a bit of a shift for her and understanding that like, oh, okay, like there's a whole world out here to experience and that I can be appreciated and I can learn and have a deeper understanding of culture and art in a way that really the access to that was much different in Boston for her. So that marked her completely. I don't think she would have ever moved back to the United States if it hadn't been that Love to Love You became a big hit. She would have stayed there and happily stayed there. She was very happy to be European at that point. So, you know, it was very instrumental in who she became and just her mindset. I think it opened up her world. So anything was always possible. It's something that she trickled down to us as girls, is that the world is your oyster. There's so much to see, so much to experience. Go. You know, she wasn't one of those people like, oh no, you have to stay home with me for the rest of your life. She was like, no, I want you to go. I want you to see the world. I want you to experience. So it was completely a foundational moment in her life.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll just say absolutely whenever. I'll be like, yes, yes. She's, I mean, I don't know what to add that. All I can add to that is that this is not new. James Baldwin and Josephine Baker and Richard Wright and many African Americans left to be free of the oppression of the legacy of slavery in America that still lingers today, you know, as we know, for all of you who have seen 1619, and we all did this with 1619, you know. So you often had to leave where that history was further away in Europe, you know, was further, obviously that history exists in Europe, but it was further away and they felt freer from the oppressiveness of America, which I still feel today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Katya Woods, Couple Social in the Philadelphia Tribune. I'm a real 70s baby. I was born in 70 and I was born in Munich, Germany. So I remember, and yeah, I lived in Germany until 1981, even though I look 12, but
you do, you actually.
Oh, thank you. No, I appreciate it. But she was a huge, like, I wanted to be Donna Summer when I was a kid. Like, that's how much I loved her. And just remember seeing her album covers. Let's talk about her style, because obviously, you know, we know that your mom sang her face off and that she was a phenomenal artist, but there was a styling to her, there was a chicness to her and an elegance to her, you know what I mean, that I think was really had an impression to a young girl like me living in a predominantly white country. And for a lot of Black girls that are we're still searching for us to be presented in a certain way. How much of that was her? Because I love the fact, like, everything from her nails to her gowns to how she moved, her stage presence. It was very, it was sexy, but it was elegant and ladylike and, you know, dare I say classy. Talk about a little bit where that came from.
Intrinsically, she was somebody that was fashionable. She loved fashion. She cared about it even as a teenager. You know, my grandmother would make dresses for her when she would perform in her band. She would have looks. So it was something, she was the type of person that would always, whatever it was, would want to make something beautiful. You know, whether it was a flower arrangement or sketching a costume or creating a room and interior design, she made things more beautiful. That was just in her nature. So fashion was very much a natural extension of that herself. And so, you know, I think that she had a large input into what the looks were, how they were created. You know, when she was in the German era, it was a little bit more hippie. It was a little bit more, but you know, and a lot of the times when I spoke to different people and interviewing, she's like, oh, you know what? If I had a show, your mother would come over with all of the stuff from her closet and she would share and give me an outfit and help me do my hair. And she was just that person. And I think when she got to be more famous, she was able to have the best of the best, you know, doing her hair and helping her create these costumes and the different fashion designers. So she was really able to go to the max with it. But yeah, she loved that part of the process. And when you think about it, you know, the way that she performed is she was donning on these characters. So if you look at the way that she did her shows, the fashion and all of that came with it was really a part of the storytelling. So it was just one element of putting the story together. So so yeah, she loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I adore your mom, and good for you that you made the movie. Don't let Hollywood mess your mother's story up. Make sure that you
doing my best,
because we synced it.
You know, Brooklyn, I am curious as to what your mom's private thoughts were about the single that, I mean, changed the world and that, you know, took her career, you know, opened her up to fans worldwide. Love to Love You, Baby. What privately, I'm sure with your grandparents, and I think it's alluded to that your grandfather took him a minute to come around to, but what were your mom's private thoughts, particularly given how Black women historically have been positioned in pop culture?
You know, I think it was her idea. You know, I think she came up with the title Love to Love You, Baby. It was Giorgio and Pete and her were working in the studio and they wanted to do something kind of sexy. And so she came up with the concept. So, you know, it was something kind of a fun idea that I think snowballed. I don't think she could have ever imagined that that was going to be her way in to stardom. You know, they released Love to Love You and it didn't do anything originally. So it was Neil Bogart who went back and said, you know what, I think he was playing it at a party and they're like, play that again, you know, and that's true. And so they went back and they made it as 17, 18 minutes. They added the moans and all of that kind of stuff at that point. So it really kind of took on a whole life. I don't think she ever expected it to be what it became, you know, and I think part of the struggle for her was that she very early on in life felt that she was going to be called. She knew by God that she was destined to do something big and that she was going to use her voice to probably do that. And I think the struggle was then it was something that was so overtly sensual and sexual and out there that there was a little bit of this like, okay, well, I know I got to do this because I know that I'm supposed to do this, but I didn't think it was going to happen in this way. But, you know, she took on, I don't think you can sell that song unless you really take ownership of it. And she knew that that was her door in and that was going to open the door. And so she accepted the challenge and she did it and she sold it. And so, you know, I think she, you know, especially as she got older, reconciled with all of those things and understood its place in her life, because she was able to break free from it in the sense of being put in that box, like she could only be that. And so I think that's also really, other than, you know, the balance of the sexuality and the spirituality, was the fact that she didn't want to be boxed in and just only allowed to do those kind of songs and that kind of thing. So, you know, but later on in life, I think she reconciled, because when I was a kid, she didn't perform it on stage anymore. So that discovery of the song for me and my sister, we had been to shows our whole life, but we didn't know that song. And so that's why it was so like, wait, what? Like, what are we talking about here? And this is really before the internet or anything like that. So it's not like we could have Googled it at that point. So it was really a shock to us because it was so different from the person that she was at that point in her life. But then later on in life, as she got older, we got older, she started performing it again. So that song had its own journey in her life. It wasn't one set of things. I think she really had a whole kind of arc with it.
You know, and another thing that impressed me, and several of our members have alluded to it about your mom, is that she, and I know Roger just touched on it, she didn't, unlike other Black women singers of her generation, or Black people, period, she didn't really carry race as a burden. I mean, she was a Black woman, it was plain as day, but she seemed like she lived her life on her own terms, covering the music, you know, her personal life, obviously, with the men she dated and married, just everything. She lived her life based on her terms. How does that inform you and on your journey as a creative woman?
I think to do just that. And I think that's why I can feel okay and comfortable with being honest. You know, I think as each generation's journey is to extend the legacy a little bit further, to extend what you learn a little bit further. And I think for me, there were certain things I don't think my mom felt she could talk about in a real way, but she always told us to be authentic and to be truthful and to be honest. And so I am able to now do that in my creativity and to understand that really the truth is really the seed at which connects us all. And so that for me is, you know, she really did tell all in her music in some way. And I'm just telling it all in a different way. And I think that, you know, that for me is something that is really important, whether it's in a film, whether it's acting, whether it's directing, whether it's singing. It's that truth. It's that search for truth. It's all a journey.
But I also think, to answer your question, that going to Germany was the reason why she was able to not be constrained by, you know, her black
burden of being a Black woman, right?
Just by your Blackness, where she could be defined by her music and by her artistry, and she was free of that. You know, that's why I went to Paris after college, and because I was trying to follow in James Baldwin's footsteps, and I was like, I can be free in Paris. You know, I can just hang out where James Baldwin hung out and be free. So, like, you know, there was this incredible freedom, and I think that really defined the rest of her career.
Yes.
Yeah, I really love. She really did live her life with a sense of freedom that you seldom see. So, bravo. We're going to have time for one, maybe two questions. So let's do Kim and Aisha, and then we're going to wrap things up.
Okay. You know, with documentaries, you have to pack so much information in a limited amount of time. My question is there any information or a story about Donna Summers that you wish you could have included, but because you had limited time, you had to leave it out?
So many. Right, Roger?
So many. So many. There are so many interesting details and moments or relationships that are interesting that we couldn't include just because of time. And I think that, you know, one of our jobs is to really do what's going to be the most impactful. So that was some serious work for us, Roger. Brooklyn asked me just the other day, she said, I think we can do some extra, there's no DVD extras, but you think we can do extras on HBO? Because, you know, there's a lot of stuff that ended up on the edit room floor that, you know, be great for folks to see. We were going to ask HBO, can they do little extra thing? I don't know. Because there's so many stories and moments, and even other people that were fans that we talked to, or celebrities that we talked to that we didn't include in the film, that really have a lot of insight as well. I wonder if we could release extras on some other, like, you know, Donna's fan page or something. I don't know. Universal. There'd be like little to be continued. There are whole amazing scenes that didn't, you know, for time, you know, we had to cut out, and we were playing one the other day, and I was like, oh wow, this is so good. I wish we could.
Well, it sounds like you can easily have a part 2. So I'm waiting for that one.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Brooklyn, let's keep
I'll
going.
tell HBO you said that.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's tell HBO tonight at the premiere. I'll be like,
yep.
Looking forward to part 2. HBO, just cough up the money.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
With all of the ups and downs and twists and turns of your mother's life and everything that she's done and all of her success, and is there anything that was left unsaid at the end of the day? What do you think that Donna Summer would want the world to know about her?
You know, I think that the biggest thing, I think there's a few things that we want people to understand about her. And I think intrinsically, where a lot of the misunderstanding about her was that she was an artist. she was a real artist and a real person. And I think that she would want people to know that she was a songwriter, that she wrote a lot of her biggest hits, Bad Girls, Dim All the Lights, She Works Hard for the Money, Love to Love You. You know, I think that was something, she didn't really care about awards per se. She wanted the respect of her peers, and her other fellow artists was really important to her, and her fans, you know, were so important to her. So I think the understanding that she really was an artist, and also that her legacy is really a legacy of love and joy and bringing people together and seeing people, you know, for who they were. And, you know, that's really her legacy. And I think that's, again, why her music transcends.
Yeah. Well, we care about awards, so thank you guys for writing about this film and getting it out there. Speak for, she's, you know, maybe Donna, but.
Yeah. You know, really establishing what her impact also too was for music and culture, not just, I mean, the music, yes, but also just culture at large. You know, I think what she meant to people really goes beyond a lot of boundaries. And so I hope that this film establishes that in a much richer way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brooklyn and Roger, thank you for telling this wonderful story. And we certainly, look, we are already, everything that Roger books, we're on top of. So Brooklyn, know that you have the same, you'll have the same type of due diligence on our part.
All right, thank you very much.
Guys, thank you for all your support.
Absolutely. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just remember that last big show that she did for VH1, the Live and More Encore in New York City. That was the absolute, oh my God, the best.
Fabulous.
It was
I
just,
still have every one of her albums.
yeah.
It's at my mom's house. Like, if you don't know what a diamond needle is on a turntable, you had to put a penny on that thing and make sure it stayed sharp.
Oh, you are funny.
Yeah.
I know, that's
Remember,
old school.
remember VH1
You are
used
old
to do
school,
the,
girl.
remember VH1 used to do the divas, and there was
Yeah.
one where it was Donna and Diana Ross, and a lot of people were nervous.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. You
They
can
were
say whatever you
friends.
want.
They were friends. It was
Yeah,
no,
but you know,
yeah.
people like to start catty things, but you can
Yeah.
say whatever you want about Miss Donna, but that mic be on all the time. That girl
All the
had
time.
beautiful vocals.
Yeah.
And we have an hour, so we should have time for 2 rotations.
Oh, great.
Listen,
I
We can
enjoyed
get
it
into
so
it.
much.
It was just sad. It reminded me very much of Nina
You know-
Simone. Nina Simone.
The
Mm.
question I had,
Yeah.
I wonder if she really felt, do you think the community properly embraced her?
no,
No.
I'm gonna say it
No.
for you. No.
I don't think they properly embraced her. And I think the Adam and Eve, Adam and Steve things alienated her from the audience that built her.
Yeah.
That interview was awful. And for her to have to make a statement like that for someone who was really so private, but still such a brilliant performer, that had to hurt. Like, that had to be really brutal for her to lose the community that built her, that helped her.
But
find
is it the
success.
community? Hold on, but let's say it. Is it, because you know there's a community and then there's us within the community.
It was the community. It
Well,
was
2 different things.
community.
Yeah.
She's talking about the gay community. She
But
came
that's
out
what
of-
I mean. Even within the community,
I'm talking
there's
about
two
the others.
fractions.
But I'm talking about us.
Oh, I mean,
but I think
Katia means black gays.
yeah, that's what Katia was saying. I think it hurt the white gay community because either way, we were still down with Donna Summer. I think
They
it
were
was more
looking for a
so
reason. They
an
knew there
issue.
was a reason.
Yeah.
We were used to it.
Hey,
hey,
We're
there
used
you
to-
go.
I grew
That's
up in
why
the-
I said what I said.
I was listening, I was waiting for Brooklyn, but hi. I grew up in the church, so I'm used to that.
So
My
Roger,
preacher,
is she
my preacher would say, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and I'd be singing in the choir, and the preacher would say that. You know, it was a very,
Roger, is she comfortable with discussing that about her mom?
yeah.
Hi guys, I'm here. Of
Brooklyn?
course I am. It's in the film.
She's right here. She's here.
Well,
Oh,
we
no,
can't
no,
see you
it
yet,
is-
Brooklyn.
Sorry, you all.
I
Sorry,
mean-
you all. I had a hard time finding the link for this. I apologize.
They were
No, we just wanted to make sure that you're comfortable.
they were deep
We
in
were-
Adam and Eve, Adam and Steve when I joined, so I was listening.
I
And, you know,
didn't
we were
know. I
also-
didn't know that she was the one that made that quote. I heard it my
Well,
whole life.
It
Didn't
was
know that she
But
was
she
the one
didn't
that-
She
invent
didn't
it.
make. She
No,
wasn't
she
the
didn't invent
originator.
that.
Little Richard, I think,
Little
was.
Richard, yeah, that was.
It's in the
that
Little
was
Richard
him.
documentary, but Little Richard struggled. I mean, you know, like so did Whitney Houston. So did there's so many.
So many.
I'm still
Struggle
struggling.
because we know the power and pull of the Black church. My father is a minister. I struggled with that, being from the Black church, singing in the choir, growing up in that environment, and then being on the DL, and then struggling with like that coming out. And I had a lot of self-hatred, and I probably would be saying that back when I was young. So I understand that, and I understand that it's such a
And it's a different way that mainstream media might manipulate something.
Yep.
Whereas perhaps in our community, we just would have been like, girl, and it would have kept moving.
When is the
And
next
it wouldn't
album
have been,
coming
it
out?
wouldn't have been no thing.
When is
Yeah,
the next
right.
song coming
Well,
out?
and I think to
Exactly.
but also to be clear, I think on stage she wasn't on a rant. She was being off the cuff and trying to be, it didn't land and it wasn't appropriate, but her intent wasn't to be condemning, she was just
Right.
being, whatever. But the times were changing, and I think people were feeling very differently, and she got caught in that. And I think, understanding at this, what the hurt that it caused was really devastating to her when she realized, oh wait, no, like I shouldn't be saying that,
I felt that.
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
did feel that.
We were also in a health crisis. I mean, people were dying, so people were definitely more sensitive.
Exactly.
Well, I
white-
will say that this actually happened before it really kicked off. It wasn't that because she had a lot of friends dying at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this comment actually happened before, and then it just traveled, and it got a lot of things added to it and things put onto it. And to her, unfortunately, my father and her did not correct the record soon enough. And I think it took a life of its own. And I think that was one of her biggest regrets, that she didn't handle that part of it better, because it wasn't reflective of her life or how she actually felt.
Well, she probably just thought it would just disappear. I mean, it was just like you said, an off the cuff comment.
Yeah, I remember
that truth be told, everybody had heard. So
yeah, I remember my friend coming to me and saying, Donna's homophobic now. And I remember being like, devastated. And I was like, not that I didn't hear it every day in my own community and home and church, but I was like really devastated. But it didn't make me want to not listen to her music. I was like, it's the,
Is it the feeling of another person like in the mainstream kind of betraying your community? Was that the feeling you had? Yeah,
when this happened, I don't know if I was that immersed in the white gay. It's very segregated.
The white gays.
Yeah, gay people are segregated. I mean, back then it was really segregated. There were black gay bars and straight.
Thank you. That's what I
Right.
mean. Like there is a separation within the community, because at the end of the day, is you always gonna be black.
And
like,
you saw
can
who was
hide being gay,
protesting.
but you can't hide being black. There's no
And
cost.
it's still separate. Let's not say that was back in the day. It's still very
Still
separate.
separate.
Look at Atlanta, it's very separate.
Yeah.
you know what? This is actually, we haven't even started the roundtable officially, so I guess we should. But this is absolutely fantastic. Malik, I want you to keep all of this in the final edit.